breaking news left and right, Nick. Like I don't even know where to start. Let's start with this. Welcome in, everybody. It's Wednesday night, and Chatterbox Reds is live, and you know what that means. Yet again, more breaking news coming from the Cincinnati Reds. Nick Kroll absolutely cooking today. Nick, how we doing?
Well, if you're not fired up for opening day now, I don't think you're a Reds fan.
Literally couldn't be doing any more than they're already doing. I literally don't think there could be any more that anyone could possibly want out of the Cincinnati Reds squad.
Don't
look.
You Nick Kroll.
Hey, maybe we'll get even more breaking news while we're live. But first, as always, before we get into it, we want to take a quick second and recognize Deep South Commodities.
As always, Chatterbox Reds proudly sponsored by Deep South Commodities. DSC is a leader in renewable commodities for biofuel production, specializing in used cooking oil collection, aggregation, and sales. Visit www.deepsouthcommodities.com for more information. Thanks, as always, to our friends at DSC. Did you invite a special guest?
I invited him. You didn't see?
I didn't see. Dude, I'm trying to get the graphics going. I'm trying to survive here, man.
I didn't even see that he replied. So I just DM'd him the link and said, if you want to come, you can come. You probably didn't even see me invite him. What's up, Clay?
Hey guys, I have no idea if my microphone sounds good. My hair looked so bad I had to throw on a hat. But I'm here.
This is the seventh show we've done this week, so it's okay.
Yeah. I've heard your microphone sound better, Clay, but at the end of the day, we're here, we're live, we're talking.
No, I know how
Reds
much
baseball.
that makes Nick upset. I'll try to figure this out live here.
Should be able to click settings there at the bottom of your screen, Clay, and make sure that you're selecting the right microphone.
Tell me if that's better.
Nope, that's worse.
That's worse.
Oh gosh. All right.
With what I got, guys.
All right, we're rocking and rolling. It's good. Welcome in, everybody. Chatterbox Reds. Clay, I asked Nick, how you feeling, buddy?
I love it. I'm happy. And, I was writing about this move, and the first thing I kind of realized a lot of these moves are pretty low risk. They're not trading big prospects, but they're getting back major league caliber talent. And to me, they're raising the floor. After seeing what happened last year with injuries and whatnot, you just need more guys that have proven it in the major leagues. And okay, then how do the Reds take that next step forward? That comes from within as well. It comes from Elly producing. It comes from Matt McLain being back. It comes from your big prospects taking the step forward that we all think that they can do.
You're talking, I assume, about the Trevor Rodgers move. Have you even seen in the chat that Ian Jabot officially back on a minor league deal now too?
That just happened, really?
Yeah, it just happened.
Oh my gosh, man! I was talking about Rodgers and not Ian.
You thought
Jabot,
you were happy, and now you heard that, and you're like, oh my god, this is the best day ever.
They're getting the band back together, man. So what does that mean for Buck Farmer?
That's someone put it in the chat. They said, is Buck Farmer next? He might be. Who knows? But let's dive into this a little bit more, guys. Appreciate you both joining. Appreciate all 160 of you that have joined live in the chat as well. I'm sure we'll pick up some more along the way, but a busy and exciting 24 hours for the Cincinnati Reds, to say the least. Clay, later in the show, I'll get your opinion on yesterday's move. But let's start with the latest move, which is that of Trevor Rodgers. Nick, we'll start with you. We did a show literally 4 hours ago, not a show, but a video 4 hours ago, talking about adding depth and major league depth at that. And now what, at least on paper, to me, seemed like the biggest need for the Cincinnati Reds this offseason as they move forward. They add depth now to the bullpen as well, making the trade with the San Francisco Giants to pick up Trevor Rodgers.
It's Taylor Rodgers that we got.
Taylor Rodgers. I don't know.
Okay.
One of the Rodgers brothers.
Well, and there's Trevor Rodgers that was a Reds trade deadline potential acquisition last year on the Orioles. So you were putting my brain in a pretzel there for a second, Craig. I was like, wait, because this is totally all
Taylor, Trevor, And there's just too many.
Well, when I was
Listen,
quickly trying to get the graphic made for Chatterbox Reds, I got the right name, I got the right picture, but I got the wrong hand. I put that it was a right. I put that it was a right-handed pitcher because there's the right, the left.
Tyler is who you put.
Crazy.
I think we left the S off of the last name too, but look, it doesn't matter. We're all excited and we're all just giddy with so much excitement that we couldn't possibly contain ourselves and focus on spell check, or in my case, saying the right name. So let's try this again, Nick. The Reds make a trade with San Francisco and they add Taylor Rodgers, left-handed reliever out of the bullpen.
I'm excited about this move. Like we were talking like 3 hours ago. I was like, biggest concern right now for me is the bullpen. It felt like the one thing that could go off the rails the easiest. And not only do they add Taylor Rodgers, but they add Ian Jabot. And they're really building some good depth right now with the bullpen. With relievers, you don't ever want to get too excited or too low on any reliever because they are volatile. Taylor Rodgers has a great track record, but that doesn't mean he's going to be great in 2025. But you need to take a stab at someone, and this guy's about as good of a candidate as anyone that was probably left on the free agent market that was close to the Reds' budget left. I love the Ian Jabot move as well. Ian Jabot looked rough, if we're being honest, that when he was on his rehab assignment, and then he pitched 2 innings for the Reds last year. But again, I love Alex Young as well. It just you're adding some real pieces here, and most importantly, I'm really high on Zach Maxwell and Luis May. But it's just nice that right now there's not going to be a ton of pressure on them. We think going into the season.
Clay, let's talk about Taylor Rodgers real quick. 60 innings pitched last year, a 2.4 ERA, and some other good peripherals, I think, that kind of lend itself to thinking that he can have success in Great American Ballpark.
Yeah, and this is a sinker sweeper pitcher, 2-pitch pitcher, which is totally fine out of the bullpen. His strikeout numbers went down a little bit, which he was very high throughout his career. So he was still high at over 9 Ks per 9, but this is a guy who's going to keep the ball on the ground. 46% ground ball rate throughout his career because of that pitch mix. And it's funny, the sweeper is really the only thing that gets swing and miss, over 30% swing and miss on that pitch. I'm pretty sure his sinker is only 13% swing and miss, but that's okay. Because when you make contact off of his sinker, it's the type of contact you want. Very light contact into the ground. So a lot of ground balls, we know how that profiles for Great American Ballpark. This is not the type of pitcher that I could see, anything's possible, but blowing up, like the Carla or the Estevez move that was rumored, that's one that I could see going very south. This one seems a lot safer than that. And at only $6 million with the Giants paying that other $6 million of his contract, it's pretty affordable when you look at what other I think Kirby Yates got $13 million or somewhere in that ballpark, and the Tigers signed a reliever for $7.5 million today. So it's kind of on the lower end of deals for proven vets. And this brings 3 lefties into the bullpen now, which Sam Mole is kind of a lefty specialist, and same with Rodgers. He actually pitched better against righties last season before his career was better against lefties. This is a guy that was a big trade deadline acquisition a couple of years ago. And, he has the pedigree and the track record to back it up.
We just got a super chat from Doug McMenamin, and he asked the question, and it's one that we have to ask the question of ourselves as well, is the Giants basically paid to offload him. Danger Will Robinson, do we have any concerns with those numbers over the past year or past year plus, Nick? Do we think that maybe he just translates really well to Great American Ballpark? Is there any concern with the trend, I guess, that we're seeing right now from Rodgers?
I don't know about a trend. I mean, a 2.40 ERA last year. I don't know. Again, relievers are like a guy like Lucas Sims and Fernando Cruz. They had all the great stuff plus numbers, and I believe in those kind of things. I'm not downplaying them, but they had pretty stinky years overall at the end of the year last year, right? So I don't think you want to just go too far one way or the other. I think this was just a straight salary dump by the Giants. I think they have to cut some salary, which is wild that San Francisco is salary dumping to Cincinnati. But it feels almost like Raisel Iglesias. Like, remember when the Reds salary dumped him? It's almost that same type of move. It's not like Raisel Iglesias was a bad pitcher. It's just at that point, the Reds kind of viewed him expendable based on their budget to try to meet it. I think this was the same situation for San Francisco. I would have been okay with the move if the Reds were paying $12 million, but only get it for $6 million. I mean, you're not going to find a guy with this kind of proven track record for $6 million on the free agent market. So yeah, I'm not really worried at all about that. But again, if it doesn't work out, what did the Reds give up here?
Braxton Roxby,
a non-drafted prospect. I mean, I know he's in Driveline. I'm sure there's something that the Giants like about him, but I don't hear his name on any prospect list or anything like that. If Rodgers comes to the Reds and blows up and you DFA him in June, oh well. Yeah, we tried for reliever. Sometimes it doesn't work. That's how I view this type of move.
Yeah, and Rodgers, the Giants have brought in Willie Adames, and with Buster Posey there now, he was not there when Rodgers signed this deal. So that is not a player that he specifically brought in. Maybe they are trying to get all the money they can to make a push after somebody else. Buster Posey's been doing a lot of different moves, and any little bit of money here and there, plus the 40-man roster spot. They have a lot of young pitchers on their 40-man. So if you can offload some money and clear up that roster spot, that could be the move for the Giants. And in terms of Roxby, like, he has a great breaking ball and a good enough fastball that he can get swing and miss numbers. But to me, Roxby's Rule 5 eligible. They did not protect him. He's going to then again be Rule 5 eligible. He has a similar makeup in terms of higher walk numbers, high strikeouts than Luis May and Zach Maxwell and others. And the Reds just prefer those players. He's, I believe, 25, 26 years old this year. So it's not like you're giving away somebody who you could stash in the system. This was kind of Roxby's year to do something. So overall, I don't think that the Reds moved away from anything of great value. And you bring in a guy that has proven, and you don't have to sign a multi-year deal. Like, it's a 1-year deal. And as Nick has echoed before, and I always say as well, there's no such thing as a bad 1-year deal, especially for a relief pitcher.
Yeah. Braxton Roxby, for those of you not familiar, last year at Double-A, 0-4 in 39 appearances, a 5.21 ERA, and 48 and a third innings pitched for the Reds. So he now goes to San Francisco in return for Rodgers. Nick, let's talk about depth. This has been ultimately the biggest focus now, it seems, for the Reds over this offseason. A couple obvious moves with Austin Hayes, which we can talk about a little bit more if we want. But at the end of the day, this is yet another move that continues to add depth and, more importantly, major league depth to this roster.
Yeah, I mean, as I see it right now, I think you have 6 locks right now if everyone's healthy, which there's a 0% chance that all your relievers are healthy on opening day. You have Alexis Diaz, Taylor Rodgers, Pagan, Mole, Santillan, and Suter. And so basically you have just a ton of guys for 2 spots. Obviously, if everything goes well and your starting rotation with Lauder and Abbott and Green and Lodolo and Singer are all healthy, Nick Martinez probably fills one of those 2 spots, and then you're down to 1. That kind of starts. When we did this exercise before, Craig, it was, all right, there's 3 spots you got to fill, and there wasn't a Jabot yet. There wasn't a Young yet. I mean, there's other options, to kind of throw in there too. And obviously Graham Ashcraft has a real potential to, end up there if the starting pitchers stay healthy. So there probably is going to be someone on these lists, maybe 2 people on these lists that aren't there when we get to spring training, because I believe the Reds have to cut 2 40-man roster spots still. And it makes, a guy like Casey Legumina, a guy like Owen White that the Reds just picked up. Those guys are probably on the top of the chopping blocks there. So it'll be interesting to see what the Reds do for the 2 moves.
On that note, Owen White has officially been DFA'd.
Owen White is gone. Announced. Okay.
So and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. Theoretically, Owen White can accept being outrighted to AAA still as part of that DFA, right? That doesn't mean that he isn't going to be in the Red system in 2025 theoretically, but it gives him the opportunity to seek a deal elsewhere or potentially accept an assignment to AAA, right, Clay?
Yeah, so he has to go through waivers now, but I think this is the second time this offseason that he would be going through waivers. A guy who I actually liked and have liked for a while now, but theoretically he could go through waivers and return to the Reds and be in AAA Louisville.
Yeah. So Clay, give me your 2 that you fill out this bullpen with on opening day, assuming everyone's healthy.
Yeah, I mean, there's the puzzle piece that is Nick Martinez and where he ultimately lands and injuries with the rotation.
For the sake of this, let's pretend Nick Martinez is in the rotation and make it a little more fun.
Okay. That's where I was leaning. I have been wanting Graham Ashcraft in the bullpen. And I know that they haven't said that he's officially going to the bullpen or whatnot, but I think that's where he ultimately lands. I think that's where you get the best version of Graham Ashcraft is out of the bullpen. And I actually think he could be a very good bullpen arm. So I'm going to put him in there for one of the 2 spots. The last spot gets a little bit tougher. I kind of like the idea of having somebody who can go multiple innings, or at least more than one. We've seen Sam Moll do that, and we've seen Suter do that as well. Man, that last spot's tough. Nick, who do you think?
I think I would like to see it be a competition between May and Maxwell. Whoever pitches better in spring training gets that last spot.
Just go with the younger guys, yeah.
But I think Alex Young finds a way into the bullpen. I think he's on a minor league deal, but I think if he's healthy, I think he's probably the guy that ends up on here. Jabot, of course, if Jabot comes to spring training, looks great. He's probably the guy, but I'm a little more skeptical on Jabot just because of how bad he looked at the end of last year. Like Alex Young still was a productive pitcher in the majors and in AAA last year, wherever he was. So I don't know. I probably would say if I have to pick 2 guys on this list that are on the roster, I would probably go Alex Young and Graham Ashcraft.
Let me ask you guys this. I don't know if it changes your response at all. So maybe it doesn't matter, but let's say that everybody on this list comes to spring training and performs to the fullest of their capabilities or realistic capabilities. What does that leave you with in terms of those last 2 spots? Obviously the goal here is, we'd love to see Maxwell and May battle it out, but let's say Ashcraft really shows out in spring training as a reliever. Let's say that Alex Young continues to, show some ability. What is it? Ian Jabot you just mentioned? Obviously it's the best scenario because you've got options then, but what does that leave you with in terms of your major league opening day roster?
I'll go first. If everyone pitches well, I'm going to take Jabot and Young, and I know people aren't going to love that because if you don't take them, you're going to lose them. I know I can send Zach Maxwell and Luis May down to AAA and stash them during the month of April when you have a lot of off days, and it gives you more options throughout the course of the season. You cannot, as a big league GM, always 100% go pedal to the floor in terms of having your best bullpen on the roster. You have to have some sort of manipulation. And I guess I should have added Graham Ashcraft in there. Graham Ashcraft also can be optioned down to AAA. So again, it's a massive if that Ian Jabot looks great in spring training, but if Jabot looks great in spring training, Alex Young looks great in spring training, I'm putting them on the roster just to kind of manipulate and stash guys. But again, we're probably talking, we'll end up having 3-4 spots open up because I think last year, Mole was injured on opening day, Pagan was injured. There'll be some injuries.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, even though Brent Suter and Alex Young are not only going to face lefties, like, I just don't know if they'd carry 4 lefties. I don't know how often they've done that in the past. It does not seem as likely to me. I think, and I don't know every single player's option situation, but I know a lot of those guys have options left, which is what you want. I actually think that you could probably get Alex Young. I don't know if you would get him through waivers, but we had this discussion last year of you can't get this guy through waivers, and they did, and then they traded him, and he went through waivers. Signing a minor league deal. Like, I understand why he's preferred in some ways, but at the same time, like, I'm not like leaving somebody who's better off the roster for him necessarily, even though what Nick is saying is true. You can't just always have, you have to use your options at times. I just think Graham Ashcraft is like the type of guy that I could blink and fast forward to July, and like if he was closing games for the Reds, it wouldn't shock me. I think that there's a non-zero chance that he could elevate to that level.
Interesting.
One quick point, just on the 4 lefties. I don't view like Suter as a lefty. Like he doesn't have splits at all, so he's not really a lefty. And I believe Taylor Rodgers kind of has some reverse splits in him as well. Is that
he
true?
Did last year.
Okay,
but his career numbers do not suggest that.
Okay, so yeah, but again, like with Suter and Alex Young also isn't a big splits guy either. Sam Moll definitely is. But that's kind of why I'm not really concerned about having a ton of lefties, because Suter's just he's your multi-inning guy. That's his purpose on this roster is not to come in and get a big lefty. It's to give you 2 innings and he's actually probably going to end up being our generation's Buck Farmer. I mean, he's going to live on the legacy. He's going to carry that hat going forward.
Again, if you're just joining us, the Reds make a move and they make a trade with San Francisco, bring in Taylor Rodgers. A big piece of this that we haven't really touched on yet, and not at length, I guess, is that the Giants are picking up basically half of Rodgers' salary for this year. The Reds will pick up $6 million. I'm seeing some comments on social media, and I think I saw it even in the chat. So I want to bring this up and see your guys' opinion. Even our own Elliot Rearing made the comment on social media. So let's put it this way. If you had to have the option and you look at Hayes, you look at Rodgers, you look at the acquisitions that the Reds have made, would you rather have multiple players, which the Reds have done, or would you have rather pooled that money for a big bat for your outfield? Which is the more preferred outcome from your perspective if you were the GM? Nick, you look antsy to jump on this one.
There's no question I'm taking the 5 players. I also wasn't all that high on all the free agent bats either, so that also is part of it. Like Tyler O'Neill would have been my top guy, but I'm taking the combination of Gavin Lux and Jose Trevino, who I think is underrated as a backup catcher. I'm taking Brady Singer. I'm taking Austin Hayes. I just think I don't think the Reds were one outfield bat away from magically fixing their roster. So yeah, I'm definitely taking the multiple guys, but I also didn't want the Reds. I don't want the Reds. No matter what, I didn't want the Reds to sign that Santander contract. So I'm biased in that regards anyways. Just I don't think it's going to be a bad contract for Toronto.
Yeah, and I think it comes down, obviously, like, who is that left fielder? Like, the big lefty bat being Tyler O'Neill or being somebody much better is a different conversation. But I side with Nick here. I thought backup catcher to me was a much bigger need. I think I put it number 2 in my offseason rankings, 2 or 3. And it's because we have not had a great backup catcher. And I know that, like, some people like one or the other, but to me, it's like Trevino makes other catchers better, especially defensively. And you look at like Austin Wells has been so much better at framing and whatnot than he was when he first came up. And he's a good defensive catcher, but he got to work with Trevino. And I think that's going to make Tyler Stevenson better. If Stevenson does get injured, and we know he has in the past, you at least have a guy that's proven it and has been there and can control a pitching staff. I think that he makes pitchers better as well. I love that addition. I wasn't as high on Gavin Lux than most, but again, this is a guy with a floor, a major league caliber floor. And after what we saw last year with injuries or, 31-year-old career minor leaguers getting to bat in the 3-hole, like I just want more guys with a major league caliber floor. So to me, I'm taking the whole litany of moves that the Reds made over Santander for just to use a name that Nick used.
Yeah, Nick and I obviously already did a video earlier today, but Clay, interested in any thoughts you have on the Wade Miley signing from this afternoon as well.
Yeah, I didn't even tweet about this. Like, I just saw it and thought, like, cool. I mean, I really don't have many thoughts. Like, he's coming back from injury, and I know that the way he pitches makes that Tommy John recovery at his age, like, more likely. I think Jamie Moyer was in a similar situation. Now, Jamie Moyer pitched till he was like 45, so a different kind of guy there. But if there's somebody who can come back from it, it's somebody who pitches like Wade Miley, who doesn't rely on his fastball as much. To me, it's fine. It's kind of like signing somebody in the middle of the season because he's going to be out for a while, and it's incentive-driven deal. So, yeah, if he comes in and shocks us all and is good, like he'll make his money. But I think there's a higher chance that we don't see him at all, or maybe only see him for a little bit of time. So, to me, it's kind of fun. Maybe it's one of those things that he is more or less kind of a coach in a way. I don't want to use that term, but we see this in football when like the old backup quarterback gets hired to be the practice squad quarterback, and you're like, oh yeah, that guy's on the team. But in reality, he's there for other reasons.
Okay. We also went live yesterday to talk about the Hayes signing. So I'll let you make any comments you may have on the Hayes signing. I think you did tweet about that one.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of Austin Hayes. I've just liked him forever. And I don't even necessarily know why. It's just a player that I've gravitated towards. And you all, not you all personally, but you all as listeners have to remember they moved that left field wall back in Baltimore, and he's pretty pull heavy. And I think that there were years I remember looking at expected home runs where he was over 25 if he played at Great American Ballpark. I think he was even 28 one year. He doesn't have like a ton of power, but he has sneaky power. And I love that he has a very plus arm in the outfield. That is something that the Reds have needed. They have a lot of noodle arms in the equation. So adding a righty bat, and I just think that $5 million price tag, although this is not a competition of how good you can be for the least amount of money, I think he's going to be better than $5 million. So to me, it's better. It offers a higher floor against righties than Stuart Fairchild. That's not me knocking Fairchild. I know I do that plenty. But when you're an outfielder and you're the fourth outfielder, yeah, there it is, 2023, 28 home runs expected if he played all of his games at Great American Ballpark, which we know that's not true, but that just goes to show how his power fits into this stadium. So he offers a little bit of a higher floor against righties than Fairchild. So on the random day off or an injury for 2 or 3 days, like I think you have a better option. We know that he can platoon as well, hits lefties well. Like I just thought this was a great fit. A guy I wanted them to acquire at the deadline in the past. So now that he's finally here, I'm pretty happy.
I've got a couple other topics I want to get into here in just a minute, but first I want to pause and acknowledge another one of our great sponsors. I don't know if Nick wanted me to do this or not, but I'm going to do it. So we'll take a pause and acknowledge 988.
Yeah, as always, we want to remind you that the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is always available day or night. It is a place to get support for anything related to mental health, whether it's an immediate crisis, simply wanting to find out how to connect with care, or anything in between. It's a 100% confidential, secure, and anonymous way to reach out for help when you don't know where else to turn. To connect, call or text 988 or visit mantherapy.org to get help. It's okay not to be okay.
All right. 250 of you guys in the chat right now. To recap where we are, the Cincinnati Reds, several moves in the last day or so. So I want to recap them a little bit. Most recently, they signed Ian Jabot to a minor league deal. Also, shortly before that, made a trade with the San Francisco Giants for Taylor Rodgers. I see you in the chat. Rodgers is spelled without a D. Thank you for letting us know. Also has an S at the end. Thank you for letting us know. Also is the left-handed twin brother of another Rodgers. Thank you for letting us know. We're doing our best here, people. We appreciate you being here, and we'll certainly do our best to clean it up as the season progresses and we get to know some of these guys a little bit better. But nonetheless, appreciate you guys. Also yesterday or earlier today, Reds announced that they signed Wade Miley to a minor league deal. And then yesterday signed Austin Hayes to a 1-year, $5 million deal to play the outfield. It's been a busy day. So appreciate you all coming in, and we'll talk about each of those maybe a little bit more here in a minute. But I want to get your guys' opinion on another thing that's come out today that we haven't had a chance to talk about. It isn't necessarily an acquisition or signing or trade, but is related to spring training and some competition that's expected at spring training. And that is Reds third baseman Noelvi Marte announcing that he will not be joining Spain in the 2025 World Baseball Classic qualifier in Taiwan in February. This is, while he received permission to go if he wanted to, at least in my eyes, a really good decision from Noelvi Marte. Clay, let's start with you, or Tyler Rodger, I should say. Let's get your thoughts on Noelvi Marte deciding to stay in Arizona for spring training, and just your take in general about what you hope or are looking to see out of Noelvi Marte this spring training.
Yeah, I had to update my name there just to throw a wrench into it for you. But Marte, to me, like, I think that's the right decision as well. Like, to me, it's time to cut anything that could be a distraction or anything at all that is not related directly to making the Reds roster and being the best player he can be for the Cincinnati Reds. He will have other times in his career to do these other type of opportunities. So for me, it's get to spring training. And in many ways, and I think that a lot of us forget about the mental side of the game. And I've been doing a lot of reading of these different articles where they interview players, and it's amazing to me how many of them will say, like, yeah, I mentally I was struggling here. I couldn't get over this. And we forget that these are people. And this is an opportunity to just wash away last year, start fresh, come into spring, and prove that he's the player that we all saw coming up through the minors, and just show us that last season was a complete wash. Still a young player, can still have a Reds Hall of Fame career in front of him for all we know. So I love the move. I think that he does have a uphill climb right now. And if he starts in the minors, that's okay. That does not mean he's a bust and that he'll never contribute. Different players come in different ways and, hit their stride at different ages. So to me, I just want him to come into camp and be ready to go and show us that he can provide something to this team.
Nick, you have any thoughts to add to that?
Yeah, I remember watching Marte back when he was a prospect for Spain, and I'm like following him on social media. It seemed like that was a pretty big like sense of pride that he had playing for Spain. So I don't think like him giving that up is necessarily necessarily like no small thing. I think it's definitely shows some maturity on his part, that he's more focused on the Reds. I think he's one of the probably would be one of the premier players on the Spain roster too. And if I don't understand everything about the World Baseball Classic, but I don't think Spain's necessarily like a sure thing for the qualifier, if I understand correctly. I don't think it's like the United States team you don't have your top American players playing in the qualifying games a lot of time. But Spain, like, it's not a sure thing that I think they qualify. So it's a pretty big deal that he's probably not doing that. So I'm not giving up at all on Marte. He's got to really prove it. But man, it sure would be nice if you get to the end of spring training and you have tough decisions that the Reds organization has to make. They have to decide, do we send a guy that really played his tail off in spring training down to AAA because we have enough healthy guys on the roster, and it's not like last year where it's just like who's left and you're on the roster. It would be nice if that was the case with Marte and Benson too. I think they're both kind of probably in the same camp right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we're being honest, both of them would have to come in and absolutely dominate spring training to even have a chance at making this opening day roster. I mean that, like, it's a chance. I think that they could completely dominate spring training and the Reds would still make the decision that the best place for them on opening day is down in Louisville. And I don't think, like Clay said, I don't think that necessarily means that it's a failure. And I don't think that necessarily means that they're a bust. It just means that I think that they've built up at this point enough depth across the organization where they can afford to allow guys to develop even more than they already have. And every move that they've made has been about building depth from top to bottom. And there's no better scenario for this Reds team to be in than to have major league depth waiting for them at AAA. And if Noelvi Marte and Will Benson can get their stuff together and come in and look like the Marte and Benson that we had hoped that they could be from day one, then that's a great problem for the Reds to have to figure out. But the truth of the matter is that more likely than not is that they're going to need some time to continue to adjust. Will Benson is reportedly working on a new batting stance. And every time that you make that kind of a change, potentially throws wrenches into things. So there's going to be this need for adjustment and change. So from my perspective, I think both of those guys are, at least for now, penciled in to Louisville for opening day. And Clay, I see you shaking your head.
One other aspect about that is important is these guys know that they can be major leaguers. This isn't like somebody who will never sniff the majors trying to get there. And them starting in AAA and dominating AAA will do nothing but help their confidence. And both of these players have seemed to struggle, not necessarily with confidence, but they could. Like, I know that we remember when Benson started off slow, went back down to the minors, came back up, and was good his first year. So starting off in an area where you get to build confidence right off the bat, and then you come up when an injury happens or somebody doesn't perform and whatnot, you're coming in with confidence as opposed to starting on the bench, trying to get a hit here and there, getting 4 at-bats every third or fourth day or whatever the situation may be. You're just banking confidence in AAA. You're getting your timing right, and now you're more prepared to contribute when they do call your number.
I think Benson has an easier path to the big league roster than Marte. I think he has less to prove. Like, I think if Benson has a great spring and they feel good about him, I think he probably finds his way on the roster. I mean, Benson had a full season almost. Well, he had a full season because he had a terrible stretch, and then in 2023, and then the end of the year numbers ended up looking great. So I think Benson, if he plays really well and looks well and they feel good about him, I think he finds his way on the roster, and someone like Stuart Fairchild or whoever else is on gets booted off. Marte would really have to, I think, prove a lot more just because, I mean, of how bad he was. And, kind of the whole issue that he caused with the team last year at the beginning of the year. He kind of got to earn his stripes back. Benson didn't have that. Like, Benson was clearly trying the whole time. He didn't, make a big mistake or anything like that either.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. We seem to do this every show now, Nick, but I think the national media has kind of put us in that position where we have to do it. Clay, the national media has decided that the Cincinnati Reds have had one of, if not the best off seasons in all of baseball. That came out over the weekend. They've since made 4 or 5 moves in addition to what had already been done. So, Clay Snowden, I ask you, who, if anybody, has had a better offseason than the Cincinnati Reds, and give me an overall grade for this offseason for Nick Krall.
There's teams with better off seasons. I think kind of a spin zone on this is I think a lot of the national media knows Terry Francona, and they are giving him a ton of credit, his addition, a ton of credit, which the spin zone is that says a lot about Francona and like that the Reds hired the right guy. And like it speaks volumes that all these people think so highly of, because to me, it's they think highly of Terry Francona more than Gavin Lux, and that's nothing against Gavin Lux, but just comparing, one of those deals or Brady Singer, whoever. The Reds have had a good offseason. I'll give it a B. They did not add the sure thing at all. There's not that one piece that's absolutely going to, you can add the 3.5, 4 win plus outfielder or whatever, third baseman or whatever. They didn't do that. So it falls short of an A. They shored up, as we've mentioned, depth. They brought in and raised the floor of the team. They've added veterans who have won in other places as well. That's key too. You have brought in a lot of winning into this organization with Lux, with Rodgers, who's played on really good teams. So to me, this is a really solid B, and it's not over. If we did this yesterday, we would have to delete the episode because of how much has changed in the past 24 hours, and it could happen again. You don't know, like, what if they now trade a reliever? You know what I mean? Like anything could happen. So to me, it's a solid B. I think those lists are really putting a lot in Terry Francona's bucket. And, he doesn't hit a baseball, but I do think that he makes the team better. And I guess we'll see just how much better.
I think Nick and I have to make a decision about whether or not we're going to continue to record content for every move, or if we need to wait until the end of the day or whatever, because it's been a busy couple of days. Nick, anything changed about your opinion on the offseason now that they've added to the bullpen, which we knew was your number one priority?
Well, grading the offseason, there's like different layers to this, because you could like grade the entire organization, including like ownership and what they gave the front office to work with, or you could just grade just the front office. If I'm just grading the front office, I think they're an A. I absolutely do. And mainly it's because they didn't blow up their farm system, but they added 5 legitimate big league players with like less than $20 million to work with. And then if you want to add Nick Martinez on top of that, it's about like $44 million for 6 legitimate big league players. I don't think there's a whole lot of front offices that were able to pull that off. So the front office, I think an A. The ownership, it's probably like a D. They could have gave Nick Krall a lot more to work with, and it would have been a totally different offseason. But given what they had, I don't know how you could be upset. This is my challenge to you. If you think that the front office had a bad offseason, go spend $44 million and come up with the better additions to this team. That would be my challenge to you. I think that's about 44 from.
6 for Rodgers, 5 for Hayes, 21 for Martinez. That's 32. What am I forgetting?
What
was that, Clay?
Lux, Singer.
Well, Singer we saved money on because we got rid of India, who was making more.
I think Singer was $2 million more, actually.
I thought it was the other way around. I think Singer's making.
But either way, I do want to clarify. The question was who had a better off season. That does not put any type of a curve on the question. Nick's right though. Like the Reds, for what they had to manage and what they had to spend, I think it was an A if we're doing it in that parameter. But there's, the Dodgers had the best offseason I've seen in my entire life. Okay, cool. There's an asterisk next to their name. We cannot, if we included them on every conversation, this would be pretty bland. But in terms of Reds and Reds type of off seasons, this is a much better off season than not than what I expected, because I did expect this would be the time for them to make a splash move. And I don't think that they made a splash move, but they might have made enough ripples to create some type of a splash.
Unrelated to the Reds, but somewhat related. Jeff Passan apparently just tweeted that Carlos Estevez is going to the Royals. So for those of you that were holding out hope that maybe the Reds would still add Estevez even after the Taylor Rodgers ad, we can go ahead and mark.
Do they have $1? They have $1 on that?
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Because that it feels very related that the Reds just made the trade. Reds were linked to him, and then he settles for the Royals because the Reds didn't offer him enough. It sounds like it probably was. I mean, I see Passan just tweeted it a minute ago. So
yeah, I'll keep an eye out. I don't see money just yet. I know Clay mentioned it earlier. Tommy Canley. He signed for $7.75 million earlier today. I'll keep an eye out for Estevez and see if we get a number on that anytime soon. Heyman and Passan and others are just tweeting it out, so keep an eye out for it.
And that Tommy Canley deal is interesting because he's similar in terms of like probably level of pitcher to Rodgers, in which like he's an aging vet who's had a very good track record. Rodgers is a 2-pitch pitcher. Canley technically throws 2 pitches, but he throws his changeup 75% of the time. And I'm pretty sure batters hit like 120 off of it. So he's a very unique pitcher, but in a way like somewhat limited, right? And he got 7.5, I think it was, from Detroit on a 1-year deal. So essentially the same type of move, if you will, than Rodgers, and it came in at $1.5 million cheaper for whatever that's worth.
Yeah. I do think, to Nick's point, I do think that it's possible that the Reds were in fact indeed in conversations with Carlos Estevez. It's not the first time that we've seen moves that are immediately followed by other moves that may or may not be connected, but certainly feel connected in the moment. So I'll continue to monitor that. If I do get numbers, I'll share them. But let's get a couple of questions from the chat real quick, just to continue with that while we look. Good friend Molly asked, Clay, who's your opening day starter? I think we're probably all in agreement on who this is, but I'll let you say it and explain it.
Casey Legamino or what? Hunter Green. The answer is Green. He's earned it. He should have had it last year. I don't need to get into all of it. Hunter Green. I know Nick will agree as well.
Yeah, I don't even think it's I don't even think it's remotely close. I mean, I think it's Hunter Green. Yeah. The question, I guess, is who starts game 2.
And I think a lot of that actually will come down to spring training. I think we talk about competition. Not only is there competition for spots on the roster, but there's competition for where in the rotation you are and stuff like that. And we saw last year David Bell making the decision to go with Frankie Montas as your opening day starter, even though many thought that Hunter Green had earned it at that point. There you go. You got your spreadsheet. But you know, I do think that Hunter Green is the clear-cut opening day starter, probably regardless of how spring training goes. But Nick, why don't you go ahead and quickly recap kind of the moves that that the Reds have made and where we are today in terms of the money spent.
Yeah, I don't know if I missed anyone, but funny, the singer in India, the difference was like $200,000. India ended up at 8.8, Singers at 8.7. So kind of wild. So I didn't even put them on there. But yeah, Martinez was 21.5, Rodgers 6, Hayes was 5, Trevino was 3.45, Lux 3.325. Now there was some there was some money that came back with Lux. I don't know how that factors in, but again, you're roughly right about $40 million. Again, my challenge to you, if you think the front office had a bad offseason, go spend $40 million and let me know. how you can do that, and then also tried to also do the caveat of not signing multiple year deals. But I think the multiple year deals was as much a stipulation for the way the Reds front office could operate this year as them not wanting to do it. Just because the uncertainty with the TV deal, I don't think that the Reds front office was in a position to go out and hand out a bunch of multiple year contracts. I think you also kind of have to factor that into this whole conversation as well.
All right. Next question, AJ Keith, regular viewer. Appreciate you, AJ. How many wins has this team improved by this offseason? 8 to 10?
I think they've raised their ceiling 8 to 10 wins. I said this the other day. I know it feels like a cheap answer, but I kind of am out of the business of just saying, yeah, this team is an 84 win team just because, like, again, the 2022 Reds, the 2022 Reds lost 100 games. Pacoda had them at 79 wins before the season started. And then in 2023, the Reds were like, 65 by some places, and then they went 83. So again, for me, I like looking at when the Zips projections come out, or I think it's Zips, whatever Fangraphs uses for their projected standings. They have a tool where you can see the margin, the like outcomes, and they'll basically tell you this team is a 70 to a 90 win team, or maybe a little bit narrower than that. That's kind of what I want to see, is what that range is. And I would like to compare that range to last year and other years. And I think that's what gives you a better understanding of where you're at. So, yeah, I think they raised their ceiling by that many wins, but will they win 8 more games? I don't know. I really don't know.
I have no idea what the projected win total is. I think that's a better question for right before opening day, when we see what other teams look like, and have a better idea of rosters and whatnot. And it'll be fun then to predict.
Yeah, to your point, Clay, I think the Reds could still make a move or two. I think it's probably more unlikely they make another big move. I'm not ruling it out. But the rest of the division, there's still a lot of moves that could be made.
The Cardinals have not done anything,
good or bad,
and there's supposed to be some variation of a rebuild going on there, and there's no evidence of that. And the Pirates are signing Adam Frazier for a reunion tour, and that's they're not really making the impact moves that I thought they might talk themselves into. So the division itself is looking kind of odd, which has kind of been the case with the NL Central in the past few years.
I do think that's interesting. I think, we talk about, the Cubs by far made the biggest move in the NL Central of the offseason. But other than that, I don't know that they've done a whole lot. In general, nobody's really seemed nearly as active as the Reds, at least. And again, we talked about the respect that the national media has given to Tito Francona, and that's going to be remaining to see. I know Nick is our Chatterbox optimist, but I really think a non-winning season this year is something went wrong. And I don't want to call it a failure because so many things can happen that would lead to that. But if this team doesn't end up winning 81 plus games with the moves that have been made, with the adjustments that have been made, including Tito Francona, barring some catastrophic series of events, that to me has to be considered a failure. We'll reevaluate at the end of the year and figure out who that blame needs to fall on if that happens. But I mean, given all the moves that they've made, considering how static we expected them to be, I don't think we expected the level of moves that we've seen out of Nick Krall. I think if you don't finish the season with a winning record, we've got to have some serious conversations. I see you guys nodding your head, so I'll take that as a general agreement. But and again, as we always say, a lot can change.
And I do agree. And one aspect about that is, I think it's the way that they don't reach that is not because Gavin Lux, Brady Singer, and Trevino were all bad or anything. It's the core that you were counting on to take this team to the playoffs, whether that be this year, next year, the year after. Like your core that you rebuilt, and this is what you have, did not step up. That's how they don't become a winning team. And if that is the case, then there could be bigger issues at hand. It's not because of the moves that they've made didn't become all stars. It's because Matt McClain, Elly, Steer, CES, the list goes on, Marte, all of them weren't able to take a collective step forward. And if they take a step back, that's where the bigger issue comes for me. But I agree with Craig. Like it's time for them to kind of start this new standard of winning, and I do think that they have a team that can do it.
Yeah. Nick and I have talked about this before, so I don't know that we're gonna talk a whole lot about it, but I put out a little bit of a thread today about Elly De La Cruz, and someone asked in the chat, do you think that Elly is guaranteed to be your shortstop on opening day? I don't think that's a real question, but what happens when Arroyo is ready for the majors? Just in general, I think, Clay, given the whole conversation that's happened the last couple of days, we haven't had a chance to talk about it. Give me your current take on Elly De La Cruz's future, not only positionally, but with the Reds.
I think that Elly's going to stay at shortstop as long as he can, and I think that he will then move to third base. I don't see an outfield move. I think he would be an elite third baseman. And I was talking to Aram Layton of Just Baseball, who is one of my good friends, and he made a good point. He's like, look around the league at everybody who's Elly's height or higher, and look at their error totals. Like they don't play in the infield because it's hard with that many long levers. There's just more a higher chance of making errors, and you get to balls that you typically can't get to. And so I think looking just at the errors and saying Elly's not a good shortstop is not fair. In terms of Arroyo, I've always kind of been lower on Arroyo than most people. To me, I think he's somebody who could be like, a good fielder and a mediocre bat. And like, I'm not moving Elly because of Arroyo. Like, if anything, or I can slide Arroyo to second or trade him for all I care. Like, whatever that may be. Like, I'm not allowing Edwin Arroyo to move Elly off of short unless Elly takes a step back defensively. And of course, it gets more combo. Okay, Sal Stewart, where does he go? And all these other guys coming up. And a nice plug here. Aram is putting out the Reds' top prospects, I believe, tomorrow on justbaseball.com. And I believe there will be a podcast as well explaining all of them in great depth. So anybody that wants to check that out, that would be great.
Yeah, for sure. Our friends at Just Baseball do a great job covering the Reds and all of Major League Baseball, especially at the prospect level. Not a whole lot of people that do it as well as Just Baseball. So be sure to check that out when you get a moment. Nick and Clay, both of you, I mean, obviously some interesting comments yesterday or the day before from Phil Castellini about how obviously you'd love for Elly to stick around beyond 2029. But ultimately what he said is that that'll fall on Nick Krall and his team. Any immediate thought? I don't want to spend a ton of time on this where I've already been in live for an hour, but any thoughts on those comments and just in general about Elly De La Cruz long-term and what that might look like?
I thought you had a good thread on this earlier, Craig, and I thought you brought up a really good point, about, Krall kind of having the decision, in terms of, do you want $40 million as part of your payroll? And I think a point that I really didn't think about when I initially saw those comments was the thing I've been asking the Castellini ownership for a long time is to stay the hell out of baseball operations, because that's, I believe, was the biggest cause of the Reds rebuild being such a failure the first time around, was because they got in the way of trading popular players when they needed to do it because they have the stupid All-Star game. And so I don't know. I'm not going to have a massive opinion one way or the other on it, but I don't want them to have any any dealings with the front office. I want the front office to do their job. I just would like them to be able to raise as much funds as possible to help them do their job. That's about it.
Okay, go ahead.
I agree with Nick.
Okay, let's do some quick hitters, and then we'll wrap this up. Again, appreciate everybody tuning in for the show. I don't want to get into this completely, but John Taylor from Toledo, do you guys believe that Nick Krall is a top 5 GM in baseball? I just don't see any other GMs doing what Krall does, considering his limited budget. I don't know if this is a troll comment or if it is meant legitimately, to be honest, but nonetheless, Krall is not given a whole lot to work with, and for the most part puts out a okay product. Thoughts on Krall and his job as GM in general?
Well, first off, let's put some respect on Brad Meter because he's the GM.
Okay.
President
of baseball
operations. Yeah, I think Krall's a top 5 president of baseball operations. I think everyone felt great about Nick Krall in 2023. You have one bad year and everyone loses it on him. If the Reds are great in 2025, everyone will be right back on board. If the Reds suck in 2025, everyone will be jumping off. So it's one of those things that when you're talking about your front office, it's what is the product on the field doing, and are they exceeding or not exceeding expectations? But yeah, I think absolutely. I think the Reds front office with what they do with the budget they have is one of the best in baseball. I don't think they're on the level of the Rays and the Guardians. I think they've done a lot better with less, but there's not a whole lot. I can't think of another team out there that I can think, wow, that team really did so much more with less other than those two.
Guardians should be in a similar discussion as well. But yeah, I don't know if he's top 5 or where he ranks or whatnot, but I just encourage everyone that has an opinion on him to also look around the league and compare. It's not just did this move hit or not. It's what percentage are GMs hitting at? Is it 50? Is it 60? Very few are hitting at higher than 60%. So to me, it's just remember that the average needs to be coming from league wide and not just only focused on the Reds hitting 100% of the moves that he does.
Speaking of Nick Krall, reports are the Phillies wanted Steer and Diaz in exchange for Bohm. Would you do it?
I know what Nick's going to say. I can tell by that smile.
Look at that smile. Go ahead, Nick.
I think that's a little much just for Bohm. I think that the idea of it, yeah, I like Alec Bohm a lot. I think Bohm would be a significant upgrade over Steer because he can play a position well in third base, which is a position the Reds don't have a concrete answer for right now. So yeah, I would be all for that. I probably would want the Phillies to like throw in a prospect or something to make that deal get across the finish line. But you give me that with a legit prospect, sign me up right now.
Yeah, I mean, Alec Bohm has been pretty average, and I like Alec Bohm a lot. Last year was by far his best season. You're looking at a 115 WRC plus, 3.5 wins, 15 home runs. I mean, no stolen base. I mean, five stolen bases. I mean, Steer offers to me like the best version of Steer is better than the best version of Bohm. I think Bohm's probably going to be a little bit more consistent over a long period of time, and he's a better defender. But man, I love Spencer Steer, and Nick knows that. And Nick's not the biggest Spencer Steer fan, so we don't always see eye to eye. But I would not do that trade.
I like Spencer Steer,
especially when you consider the years of control. That's obviously important. I think Bohm has this year and next year.
Yeah, I factor defense in a lot more than a lot of other people. And Bohm was +5 outs above average at third base. I think that would make a significant upgrade for the Reds. But I like Spencer Steer. I got to interview Spencer Steer. He was really nice, very generous with his time. And I just think that he's the kind of player that you could capitalize on right now. You don't have to. You don't have to by any stretch. You don't need to be trading him for the hell of it. But if there's a deal that you really think could make your team better, I think you should consider it.
Well, last thing on that, I always like to point out about Spencer Steer, he's one of the few players who has stayed healthy. I mean, 157 games each of the past 2 years, I believe. And when You talk about just wanting to plug a player in, 2020 player who theoretically can move around if needed, and he stays on the field. And I think that that's important as well.
We'll keep this one quick because we talked about it earlier in the show, but Heine may not have been here. Thoughts on Marte's potential this year? Seems like he's not being talked as much. Potential is an interesting choice of words here because the potential is through the roof. Actual expectations, probably not so much.
I don't know if I have any expectations for him this year. I mean, I don't think his potential is really that much different than it was going into last season before he got suspended. I think everyone was as high as you could possibly be on Marte, 11 months ago. But I'm just not going to have any expectations for him right now. I still have high expectations that he can become a productive big leaguer. I just don't have high expectations that it's going to happen in 2025. He's still really, really young. He could still, he might be, the Tigers are the perfect example of this, Clay. You would know they have several players that have come up, didn't perform. They had to send it back down. And there's a lot of teams like that where sometimes it's the third time around that it clicks for a guy. And that could be like the case with Marte.
Just remember what age a lot of players come up, and players his age, it's very common for them to be in Double A at this point. I know he's a little different and he's had experience in those levels and whatnot, but I say that to just remind everyone, when you write off a player who's 23, 24 years old, and then you see a player like Parker Meadows, who's 25 years old as a rookie, and oh, wow, he struggled. Like Nick said, he went down, came back up. Now everyone's talking about Parker Meadows as a 4-win player going forward. And, like I said, development is not linear. It's not all the same trajectory. There's going to be ups and downs. And getting sent to the minors is not a bad thing at all. I think people have kind of gotten this mind that minors is failure. And it's not. It just simply isn't.
We're not going to, no offense to Zach, we're not going to go through this today. Quick plug. Nick and I did a podcast and video yesterday about the Austin Hayes signing, where Nick went through the opening day lineup, both from the left-handed side of the plate and the right-handed side of the plate. Also tweeted it out. So appreciate the question. Don't have time to get into it right now, but we'll give a quick plug to Nick, who and Chatterbox Sports on X.com for tweeting this out, I believe, yesterday. So go check that out there. We haven't touched on this in a while, but any clue on FanDuel Reds package announcement or price? I don't know that there's any movement there. Expectation is going to be $20 a month based on what we saw from other markets last year. But unless either of the guys have anything to add to that, I'll probably just leave it there.
I mean, right now, $20 a month is the price. I saw something that they're considering lowering the price. I saw a FanDuel Sports Network executive on CNBC or something like that talking about it, that they are considering actually lowering that monthly price. I would just encourage you to be on the lookout when it gets closer to opening day. I have a feeling that they'll offer some sort of deal like they did when the NBA season started. The FanDuel sports betting app offered 3 free months if you bet $5. So there'll probably be an opportunity like that come March to maybe get the first 3 months of the season for free. So we'll pass along anything we see. That's kind of where I think things are at right now.
For sure. Fergie wants to know if we have a job for Joey Votto. The answer is Joey Votto is always welcome in the Cincinnati Reds organization. Thanks for the question, Fergie.
Yeah, you can join the podcast.
Yeah, Joey, we got a spot for you whenever you're ready. Gentlemen, it's been fun. It's been a busy couple days. Nick, as always, appreciate dedication. I know the fan base appreciates the work that you put in. Clay, for those of you that don't follow Clay on social media, a ton of really good insight. Recommend you following him. Social media handle on the screen right now. And of course, if any more news breaks, Nick, myself, others will do our best to cover as quickly as possible. As always, quick plug for our friends on Off the Bench. They are live Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. through 12 p.m. Chatterbox Bearcats live after every Bearcats men's basketball game. Went live last night. Follow us on social media, x.com, Chatterbox Sports, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Chatterbox Sports all over, and your home for Cincinnati sports coverage across the board. Look, it's been a fun show. Clay, appreciate you joining. Nick, as always, appreciate the opportunity to join you. And to those of you that are watching, or to those of you that are listening on podcast later, we sincerely appreciate your support. For Nick, for Clay, I'm Craig Sandlin. This has been Chatterbox Reds. Go Reds.